Okay. You guys all set?
Yep.
Okay, it's 6:02. I'd like to call the meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I know that this week has been dominated by the Woods Brook, but we also have lost a lot of people this week, so I want to take a quick moment of silence for that as well. Thank you. Okay. Start with a roll call, please.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Bushman?
What? No. I'm deputy mayor now?
No.
Okay. Please full
And he's mayor, so we're
Okay, right. Brian?
Yes.
Okay. Karen? Yes. Bob?
Here.
Kevin?
Here.
Ben?
Here.
Bob? Sorry about that.
Mayor.
And
No, I'm talking about mayor.
Those words
Mayor.
have terror into people's hearts.
So, before I go on to announcements, Anne has been on vacation this week, so Judy has been stepping in and running the show, so thank you, Judy, for that. And the second thing I forgot to put on paper, but we made the decision to record meetings audio-wise, so I'm recording via my laptop and my phone, and that way is another way so that people can listen to this from other places and get whatever they need to from it, and also to allow you guys, as you're putting the minutes together, to have access to that. So I just want to make you guys aware that's going on. Okay, we're going to start with announcements and correspondences, and we'll start with the easy one first. Last meeting we talked about the Richmond Avenue paving, and the question came up is if that was something that the village could fund or help the golf course with. Richmond Avenue is the road that heads up to the golf course and has had some definite damage pre-flood. And after that meeting, we looked into it and discovered that the state defines that road as a certain length as 0.42 miles, which means after Neil measured it, the road, according to the state, led all the way up to the parking lot of the country club, which basically allowed us to do the paving as it would be any road and get reimbursed through the CHIPS program from the state. So that just was a quick, nice thing that worked out in that situation. All right, update on the Woods Brook flooding situation. I'm going to sort of try to give you the Cliff Notes version. As a lot of you are aware, it's been a week and a half. So going back to Saturday night, received a phone call from Neil around 7 to 7:15 that saying that there was some issues starting to happen within the village and some flooding. And we had a couple conversations after that, and it was at 8 p.m. that I declared the state of emergency. The town declared it a little bit after, somewhere after 9 o'clock. We established the command center at the Hoosick Falls Fire Department, which was interesting. My little car driving across Main Street to there was a little bit scary. I met literally over 100 different people, but one of them in particular was Kelly Paslow. He works for the county, and I'll explain more about his involvement, but he was one of the people who sort of led the response and managed some of the chaos, made it into order. Emergency crews worked through the night into the morning hours. Originally, I thought there were 15 fire departments that were responding, but there were actually 25 different fire departments who responded, on top of the police rescue squad, many state officials, and state agencies. DEC did reach out to Superfund and potential Superfund locations early on to find out how things were, and followed up with them later in the week. That was one of a couple things we sort of kept an eye on. The other thing was the wells, with the concern of the wells, the water becoming too high in the wells. Of course, if the water got up to the wells, that would be a definite issue. And I think we had one of the water rescue teams actually took Josh, who's the water treatment assistant operator, but he's in lead right now, over there in, what was it, like 1 or 2 in the morning. Drove basically over the Little League fences because those were all underwater at the time. And they checked, and the well was fortunately okay. So our water situation was okay, all the way down to the filters. Everything in terms of that was okay, which was a nice relief. And the other big concern we had was the area on Church Street, which everyone has seen the damage there. But the fact that a water main and sewer main run underneath that road, and the damage came to within about a foot of those pipes, you think? They were keeping an eye on that throughout the night and early morning, and suffice to say that it was okay, and they did some tests in the morning as well, and those turned out okay. I just want to very quickly read the list of agencies who are involved because it's an incredible thing. These are all various responders. There's 25 fire departments, 3 ambulance companies, 3 police agencies, and 9 other agencies. Hoosick Falls Fire Department, Town of Hoosick Rescue Squad, North Hoosick Fire, Johnsonville, Cambridge, White Creek, Buskirk, Raymertown, North Bennington, Bennington Rural, Petersburg, all these fire departments, Central Brunswick Fire Department, Spiegeltown Fire Department, Brunswick No. 1, Pittstown Volunteer Emergency Corps, Petersburg Rescue Ambulance Squad, Melrose Fire Department, Post and Kill Fire Department, Berlin Fire Department, Clifton Heights Fire Department, the Freestville Fire Department, Nassau Fire Department, Castleton Fire Department, Johnsville Fire Department, West Hoosick Fire Department, West Sand Lake Fire Department, Greenwich Fire Department, Hoosick Fire Department. On top of that, the Rensselaer County Bureau of Public Safety was here. Their director, assistant emergency manager, EMS coordinator, zone EMS coordinator, chief, deputy fire coordinator. Rensselaer County had their deputy county executive, Chris Meyer, there that night. And the health department was there from Rensselaer County as well. New York State OFPC Task Force Number 2, Urban Technical Search and Rescue Team. Hoosick Falls, I think, had 8 officers that night. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay. NYSP had 2 units here. Rensselaer County Sheriff had 3 units here. New York State DEC Emergency Manager and 2 spill responders and 1 dam safety staff member here. National Grid was here. The American Red Cross was here. St. Mary's Academy, as you guys know, opened their building at Hoosick Falls Central School for an emergency evacuation location. There were other units deployed to Pittstown, of course. CERT team for a shelter, Bureau Car number 5. And this doesn't include the DPWs and highway folks from the village, from the town, and Pittstown and the county. It was an exceptionally impressive response.
And numerous media.
And numerous media the very next day. Absolutely, it was incredible. And just to give you some other updates, as I mentioned, Hoosick Falls Central School and St. Mary's opened their doors. I know Kevin and Bobby were out with me into the wee hours of Sunday morning, seeing what they could do, offering assistance and thoughts on anything they could. I had texts from members and board members calling, reaching out to see what they could do. On Sunday, the American Red Cross took on a couple residents Saturday night into Sunday, and I spent a lot of time with one in particular who had lost her apartment. They also supplied 30 cleaning kits, 24 of which were taken by residents, which was really good to see. These were free cleaning kits. And the 6 remaining were sent to the fire department, where I think the rest were taken. I'm not sure. One of the huge responses that was just a benefit to our community was the Southern Baptist Convention's disaster relief. I was contacted by Mark Ballard, who is both the president of Northeastern Baptist College over in Bennington and a resident of the village of Hoosick Falls, and Ed Lucas, who is a maintenance person there and also part of the disaster relief. I actually invited Ed here. Ed, do you want to come in and just give us a quick summary on what you guys have been involved in?
4 of the people with me that helped out this week. So this is just a small group of people that were with me this week. We had up to 11 people volunteering their time to come and help out at the basements. We had 11 calls, 9 of which we will hopefully finish up on Friday with. We had 2 that the library never called us back. And then the gentleman out by the CMA church with the trailer, we can't do nothing with that because of the structural issue there. So we've done 9 of them up at on Ball Street with the Browns house. We've been down at Hall Street with the Bennetts. We're going over to
Ryan's?
Walton Street.
Tomorrow to do Ryan's house. One to clean out on Route 7 to do, and then we have another one up on Mechanic Street.
Okay.
And we'll finish those ones up. We've also been up to the Buttons house, and there were 2 other basements. We were up at the Saks on Cottrell,
Okay.
and there's one other one that I can't think of the name of. So we got to do 9 houses. This is what we do in Southern Baptist Disaster Relief. We come out, and our main concern is the homeowner, and we try not to, like we helped out do the museum because we didn't have no calls coming in yet. We really don't, help the businesses unless we don't have any homeowners to help out. But for us, it's about helping out the homeowner and just showing the love of Jesus Christ to those of the community.
Well,
Gratitude.
you guys were able to present a service that was so important to so many individuals. I got to speak with many here who were just like overjoyed with the response you guys had. So I just want to say from us in the village, thank you guys so much for everything you did for us, for the village. Thank you for your service. And again, they're still available if anyone you think is going to need that assistance. So awesome. Thank you guys so very, very much. Thank you for being here.
Just for you to know, since we're on that subject,
Mhm.
we are going to be critiquing the situation probably, hopefully next week. We'll
Yep.
have a date for that list. Maybe not everyone, but majority of them will be requested to come back to the village to meet
Yes.
with us.
Okay.
So we can critique the situation as to what occurred, how we go about, God forbid that it happens again, but it does happen. And these are some things that we've been practicing over the years too.
Yeah, and that became very obvious to me as the new guy in the situation, realizing that these are situations you've practiced for and assessed afterwards, because there's no way you can get that much order and that much effectiveness in what you guys are facing. So some other highlights since the initial night of and the day after. On Monday, we were able to give a tour to U.S. Congressman John Faso, State Senator Kathy Marchione, and Assemblyman Steve McLaughlin, as well as County Executive Kathy Gimino and Deputy Executive Chris Meyer. We got to show them around Hall Street, all the way down to Spring Street. I've literally lost count of all of the agencies who have been here. So I'm just going to kind of fast forward to today. Two things happened of note today, and if you guys came early, you saw the video. Neil and Mark and myself and two guys from the Highway Department went into the culvert that runs underneath the Dodge building across the street, and eventually comes out at Spring Street. We got through the majority of it, probably about 95% of it. The last 5% we were a little bit decidedly not going through that part, but it actually was in better condition than we expected. We charted a bunch of things, and we're going to pass that information off to you guys, and you guys already have the video. It was just sort of a fascinating thing, but it seems like the damage was further up that caused the issues, and that area actually was sort of a better situation than we expected. The other thing that happened today, which is a pretty big deal, is Jamie Rubin. He's the state operations director. He's kind of I don't know if the right-hand man of Governor Cuomo is the right label, but he's definitely responds directly to Governor Cuomo. He was here along with DEC Commissioner Basil Sagos, Kate Deneen, who's Chief of Staff to Jamie Rubin, and James Allen, who's the Director of Communications to Governor Cuomo. They were there today as well, and we gave them a personal tour of Hall Street and the area around Hall Street and Church Street, as well as going up to the location of the dam. They got sort of a first-hand look at the situation we have, and of course I described a lot of the history as much as I know about the situation. So they have an idea of what we're facing, and we've sort of already started to sort of decide and look into what are our immediate fixes. Obviously this is a long-term fix, but in the same time, we can't be as a village in a situation where we're all holding our breath every time there's a heavy rain. And that's what we're trying to do right now, is just come up with a good immediate solution to this. And I think that so far everyone who I've spoken to from the state and county is all on board about that. So we're going to see where that goes in the coming days and weeks. And if there's any information that comes out, of course, I'll be very quick to get that out to the public. There are so many people who I think we really need to thank in the response. Again, I've lost count of all the agencies between DISH's Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services. I think that's the acronym. DEC Financial Services was over in the Armory. The county response, it's been incredible. Bob Ash Police Department, you guys were terrific through this whole situation. All of the fire departments who were here, the office staff with Ann, Gon, Judy, and Denise have been fantastic in handling everything, especially right after the July 4th barrage of phone calls that came in. Mark Serdam is the code enforcement building inspector, who's been doing just a ton of work out there to get an idea of an assessment and help out people and sort of give an idea of their individual situations and what comes next. And also, Mark Serdam is the supervisor for the town of Hoosick. We've been in constant communication. He's been present in every single meeting that we've had. He's been a very solid team member on this response, and I think it's been really nice to see the town and village acting as one, working together on this. It's been really incredible. I want to thank Rick DiDonato for his website updates and allowing me to post directly to the town and village community Facebook page, which I think has gotten the word out on a lot of things very quickly, and I was very glad to see that. I want to thank Kelly Paslow. He has been a maestro. He was the guy who was leading the sort of the emergency response, and also he's been putting a lot of things on our radar because he's been through this a lot. This is what he does, and he's helping keep us sort of keeping certain things in mind as we proceed. I want to thank John Patterson, who is providing a lot of great assistance wading through the legal side of all this, because this is all new to me. I want to thank Tony Rice. I don't know if he's here. He's been helping out with assessments. But finally, I want to thank the highway crew, Neil, Bruce, Brian, Mike, Phil, as well as the wastewater treatment plant operators, Kenny and Keith, and the water treatment plant, Josh, and also our two poor souls who signed up for just a little bit of summer help, Andrew Hoig and Alex Bugby. I don't think I can put into words the effort that all of those guys have put in, the soldiers on the field taking care of all this. And a lot of people have asked me how, as a new mayor, have I handled this and how am I doing? And based on the people around me working for the village, it's just been such an impressive response. So I wanted to really thank them for it. So thank you guys. So at this point, as I've given you sort of my update, I want to turn it over to the guys from Barton and LaJudas. Bob, are you speaking today?
Yep.
This is Bob Murphy. Don Fletcher, I'm sorry.
Carly.
Thank you, Carly. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
To give you a little bit of background, the village pursued a grant in 2015 to put together a study and was turned down. Pursued it again in 2016 and got the approval to submit a study to go for somewhere between $750,000 and $1 million of grant money to start to handle the solution. So they've been involved in this since late 2014 as the firm who studied this, looked at the history of this, come up with a lot of plans. And they're on the 28th of this month are going to submit a study. I don't think it's complete yet because there's still things changing. And obviously everything that happened here has changed a lot of things. But at this point, I'm going to pass it off to you. After we hear from them and get an explanation on what they're thinking, we can ask whatever questions that we have. And then also I will open it up to the people here if they have any questions or comments. And that will also be sort of the people to be heard section. So let me turn it over to Bob Murphy.
Thank you, Rob. And again, my name is Bob Murphy with B&L. And the reason we're here first is to conduct this public hearing for the grant application that's about to be submitted. As Rob introduced, last year was we did also have public hearings in both the village and the town in support of the study application. And this year, first of all, that study was funded and is near completion. And as such, the village and town wanted to submit for implementation in this round. We scheduled the public hearings in both the town, which was yesterday, and the village tonight a couple weeks ago. Lo and behold, we had the storms last weekend and the flooding. And here we are today discussing the proposed implementation measures. As Rob mentioned earlier, there are short-term emergency measures that need to be taken care of and long-term fixes. And with grant funding and under this program that we're submitting to, it's long-term. So tonight I'm going to present some longer-term approaches that we've developed as part of our study thus far. As you all know, a lot of the damage from the flooding last week was in the village. It is a town and village project, as the watershed is mostly in the town, up on the hill here. And that might be difficult to see, but this box over here is the village, and out here is all town land going up Johnson Hill Road. So during the study, we looked at numerous ways to try to slow down the water coming down from the watershed as it comes into the village. As we'll see, I think it's this one, the Woods Brook has long been traversing through the village. This goes back to, I think, 1876. And at this time, a lot of the buildings hadn't been developed further in between Main Street and Church Street. And as development occurred, it narrowed and in some cases enclosed the Woods Brook. And as a result, the culverts that go under these structures and roads are oftentimes smaller than they are upstream. And so when you have a big storm event like happened last week, the water doesn't have as much place to get out into the outlet in the Hoosick River. So that said, we looked at ways we could slow down the water through attenuation, which is essentially creating dams and what's the word? Places upstream where we could have water pool instead of rushing straight down.
Those are detention
unabated.
ponds?
Retention ponds, thank you. That offered some assistance. It's a very deep channel going up the Johnson Hill Road, and the ability to really create those sort of retention areas is limited as far as capacity goes. There was one opportunity, I believe it's at the site 2 up there. Our project lead here on the study, Brad Grant, who's able to join us tonight, went up and spoke to some of the homeowners up in that area, and he was out here in the field over the spring, and that seemed to be like a possible way to slow down the water. However, it wasn't really going to be enough to really mitigate the concerns of the flooding downstream. So the alternative approach that was developed was, your colleagues put that over, was a rerouting of the stream up by the golf course off of Richmond Ave, which was mentioned earlier. In this way, with a 8x8 culvert system, taking water from just above the dam up here and releasing it further upstream in the Hoosick, down between St. Cobain and the Little League fields down to the south there, would enable up to 90% of the peak flows to be diverted that way, and still allow for the continuation of water to be collected in the culvert systems in the village. So this, we looked at numerous routes to come right down Richmond and come across up in this area across Church. The advantage there is that there is a culvert already beneath the railroad tracks there, and the railroad is tough to deal with. So that was a good chip we thought would be beneficial to the railroad. That might get them to play ball a little bit better, as well as get through the permitting processes from that end. The other option, which would come through the baseball field next to the rink and the pool area and come across directly, would involve the installation of a new culvert at the railroad crossing. So that poses some other problems, but it would disturb probably fewer property owners in that case. The numbers here that we're talking about, and to finish up the description of, I guess, the solution here, there would still be water flowing through the current route of the Woods Brook, but it would be 1/10 of the number at the current peak levels, and it would be hoped that an outlet would be established at the dam of about a 24 diameter pipe, expanding to a 54 diameter pipe further downstream, and then with being able to fill in around that pipe in some of these dangerous over 100-year-old culverts that are already there, thereby hopefully stabilizing the infrastructure that sits on top of it. That would be able to capture that 10% of the flow in the case of a significant peak flood, but would make the situation safer in the village, diverting most of that peak flow to the southwest. Altogether, these improvements are about $8 million. Through this particular grant application, as Rob mentioned, only 750 to $1 million can be requested. This is where we need to continue the dialogue that the village and town have had with other funding sources, such as DEC. I know that they've been involved. New York State Homes and Community Renewal, who runs the CDBG, the Community Development Block Grant Program, has been in communication with both us and the town and village and DEC. And before we submit this application, we're going to need to know how we can get done with that up to $1 million and request that in the short term. The timeline for all that is that the grant deadline for the submission of the application is the end of July, and the awards are determined in December. So, with that said, it comes in a question of how we're gonna do phasing. That stuff we need to still work out, but the communication lines have been established and are open.
Can I ask one question, please? Does the Army Corps of Engineers play a role in this?
Oh, they will. They will certainly play a permitting role in this, certainly.
At an extra cost, or?
It's a we'll just have to work with them, as far as getting permits for doing a stream rerouting like this.
Thank you.
Did I miss anything, Don, or?
I mean, Don Fletcher, Barton, would you just, I guess,
One thing I want to mention, that when the elected officials came down, Don was here as well, which was really great to have Don there on that. So I just want to mention that. Sorry,
I
Don.
mean, I think one thing we're still trying to look at a little bit, you know, we talked about the 2 reroute options, especially last night at the town hearing. You know, from a phasing standpoint, there's no question it would be advantageous and easier if we could stay in the existing route, generally in the existing route. We have some concerns about it. I mean, some is, you know, like Bob said earlier, you've got flow, a lot of water, obviously, coming underneath buildings, shallow culverts underneath roads at crossings, and it's obviously right through the heart of the village and all the infrastructure. So it is still an option that's being contemplated, but it's not an easy one, because as Bob said, if you put the numbers in basic perspective, the upstream detention can shave off about 10 to 15% of the flow and hold it back, and then let it release at a later, slower route or timing. So then out of the remaining 1,000 CFS, which is about 300 fire hoses going at once, to put it in perspective, you're talking, if you reroute it, we were looking at about 10% going down the Woods Brook, and 90, obviously, like you said earlier, going the other way. So if it all continues where it's still going, you're looking at least an 8-foot wide by 8-foot high structure, which is just obviously a really, really large structure. So as you're in the back of all these lots and trying to cross streets, you have to be able to find the vertical grade to be able to put this structure in and not have it stick 5 or 6 feet literally out of the ground. And what does it do aesthetically, and what does it do to property values just in terms of the looks of it and how it would function. So it's something we've been talking quite a bit about. I mean, can you split the flows through the village? The problem with that is now you're disturbing twice as much area, including all of the private utilities and the gas lines and the sewer lines and water. So you'd rather not split it if you can. From a phasing standpoint, there's no question keeping it where it is makes more sense as you try to find money, because you can build part of it, you know, and as you find more money, build more of it up, you know. So that's one thing where phasing could be better staying where it is compared to the rerouting options. But I think from a physical standpoint of where to physically be able to put it has a lot of challenges associated with it. So, you know, so that is something else we're still contemplating.
And the last thing I would add as well is that the opportunity exists down by the Little League fields to have an open channel system with a liner around it, obviously to protect against the present plume of PFOA down there. But that opportunity does exist down there, and that might be something, for instance, funding agencies might be interested in looking at, rather than a pure hardscape system. So that's depicted on our graphic here as well. So I want to mention that.
Before we go on, I failed to ask for a motion to open a public hearing, and we started at 6:14. So I'm second for a motion. Bobby, second. And any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Public hearing started. Sorry.
So have you got the money with the retention pond be the first project you would undertake?
Well, that's where you would start. I would slow down the water coming down. However, usually when you're talking about doing these stream correction and widening, increasing flow, I should say, the ability to flow, you would start lower so that you could work your way up, because you need the bottom to be the biggest. That becomes the issue here, is that's the biggest cost is getting from that area on the Hoosick River up to the just above the existing dam. That's what you would do ideally if you could start with that. If we're gonna have to piecemeal it.
If you had all the money, when you build drainage, you work down, you work low end and work to the upper end. You don't work high to low. So.
Where's the echelon?
So that's where some of the funding and the phasing becomes a challenge. Is, for instance, if you get the first 10 to 15% of the money, you're right, we would likely start with fixing some of the upper area in the town. Where can we detain? You know, part of it again is trying to get in a structure with something that we can catch all the woody debris. You know, we're not talking about catching leaves and stuff, but you know, we don't want trees and stumps and large stuff obviously blocking the conveyance system. So you're right, that would likely be a very early item that would be done.
I know the golf course owns that property in the valley that goes up through there, and I'm sure they'd be glad to sell that to you.
You mentioned one of the possible reroutes under the railroad. Now, that's kind of a two-part question here. That's where the railroad washed out, and that's also because we both actually live right there. That sinks in about twice a year in the same spot. That's why trains are slow, because the rails are all wobbly. What is the condition of that culvert under there? Is that even do we know?
It's not. It would have to be repaired.
Yeah,
and
it wouldn't. It's not even close to the size it would need to be.
So the railroad would probably like that because they don't have to pay for it.
Exactly.
Ideally, but yeah, and I know they had damage to that. Was it that spot where the
that's
track,
where
It went above the culvert. The culvert, I was surprised, stood up.
Okay.
It was above it. It just washed everything down the bank.
Yeah.
And you could see the rails and right down into the ground.
Yeah, through about one
what
half
they
of the
did is
track.
they just filled it back in.
But they've had problems there continuously. And that's
you stand down there, you watch the tracks. They'll go just like
Yep.
this.
And then they come and they put more ballast in and they
All
fix
they
it.
do
and then
spring and fall. They come in, jack it up.
Well, it's because their speeds are so slow that they want to get up to.
Well, wouldn't that
faster
create
speed.
more problems on our end down there if you flow that down there?
Well, what it
Because
would do
the lady's bank is right there where that brook is, and it keeps eating it away.
Well, the area where we would replace the culvert would be brand new, and the thought going that way is that ordinarily the railroad moves at their own pace when it doesn't interest them.
But they're not federally owned. The railroad. This is owned by Southern.
Right, Norfolk
They're not
Southern,
federal
right.
or anything. So
They're-
you guys could probably do a lot with these guys, because if they're not federal, they're not gonna. I found that out that they weren't.
You think?
They're federally regulated, but they're privately owned.
They're privately
Yeah,
owned.
it's a joint venture between Pan Am
They're owned by
and
Pan Am.
Norfolk Southern.
Interesting.
So it's Pan Am Southern is their
Pan Am
joint
Southern.
venture.
That's what they are. So.
And if I
Which is operated by
if I understand this correctly, you would basically have an 8x8 concrete box running this whole length, which would give the water speed to get out of there, so it wouldn't be bunched up like it was.
Yeah.
Is that?
I mean, one thing, if you think of the end of Woodsbrook now, I mean, there was a project done many, many years ago, and that really hasn't had problems. I mean, from what we had seen in all our modeling and all the historical data, and even the event that happened this week, is there was a lot of what's called freeboard, which is available space above the top of the pipe, or the top of the water in the pipe when it was discharging into the river. Because you're about 12 feet up from the bottom of the box to the base of the Hoosick River, right?
Right.
And then that was flowing very much, but it had room. And what you'll see in that last, I don't know, is it about 1,000 feet or so, I think?
It's about.
Is basically a big concrete structure that allows the water to get, to get out of the village and into the river.
And even with the flooding that we had, it all still ended up in that spot. And I thought that I heard from someone that there was still 3 feet of space there, Neil. Even at the highest level, that structure, that part was fine.
Yes.
I mean, they had space to
By
go.
the sandbar?
Yeah, by the sandbar, that whole concrete.
Yeah.
So as an example on that, what we were originally looking at is, ideally you would keep that whole section and how it discharges into the river. If you were going to go that way with a much larger structure, and you'd have to get deeper with that structure, you may have to redo that area and maybe not be 12 feet into the river. You might be 6 or 8 or 4. We'd have to figure it out. I'll do the engineering of it. And that's,
go deeper
again,
with that, you're saying to bring that down?
well, you bring it down because you'd have such a big size structure. If you look at some of the backyards there now, it's not really deep where that water comes through. I mean, most of the piping takes about a 10 to a 25-year storm. And that's not that unusual for older infrastructure, that's what size it takes. The problem now is, I mean, face it, we had, 5 inches of rain in 3 hours. You had 7 inches over about a day. You're just getting larger events, and the infrastructure can't take it.
With the river rising, wouldn't that adversely affect it if you lower
Yes.
that?
Yes. And that's why we wouldn't want to do that, or
Right.
we could only do it to a point where it doesn't backwater. Because you're right, you don't want to go so low
Right.
that then the river is constricting you.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Kevin?
The reason that's so high for a lot of those people in their backyards is because that has silted in and gravelled in over the years. So to
Talking
go
about
in
through
there
Hall
and take-
Street and,
on Hall Street, so to
Mhm.
take a look at that and say it's pretty high, well, it never used to be that high,
Okay.
but it's just silted in and filled in. The box that you talk about that empties into the river, I've seen the river come up high enough under Hurricane Irene and Sandy to fill that box.
Mhm.
That's why I asked that question.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and I've seen all of those fields where you plan on dumping that underwater. So I don't, I'm a little confused as to how, once the river swells, and that's twice in 6 years I've seen it, and I've seen it before that with some of the spring melts and stuff that we had. I'm a little confused as to how that's going to fix the problem, because that's only just gonna jam up.
It sounds to me like this is trying to fix, I mean, the Woods Brook flooding versus the river flooding, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, have tended to be separate things.
Yeah.
But it won't be, because they wanna dump it into the river. And if the river comes up to the point where you're trying to push into the river, it's not gonna happen.
Well, and that's why
So-
we weren't really looking, that's why the option of replacing in the location is tough, because if we have to reduce that, it's making that a bigger issue. If we reroute and get farther upstream, we're trying to stay above that river, because you're right, we don't want the river to be backing all the way up, and when we get a big event, that the water can't go
What I'm saying
anywhere.
is where, when you reroute, you're rerouting into an area that does flood first. Floods before the box does.
Well, to be clear though, was that flooding actual river water, or was that because of the rain, it got caught there? And it was because the greenway, it creates a catch
Talking about the
basin?
flood in the fields?
Yes, was that river water or was that
Neil?
rainwater?
Do you have any thoughts on that?
From Melton Field and we got Forest and Rogers Griffin.
Yeah, so it
wasn't river water.
Well, I mean, that sounds like another,
To the river.
Right, so this would probably, rerouting there, help mitigate that if you have an open trough to bring some of that water out to the river, because it gets caught, because where it goes under the greenway is the smaller culvert as well.
and it sounds like a
It's
separate
screening
issue is
area.
why
Yeah.
couldn't that area drain properly and why did it flood so high? I mean, I know it you know, when the river gets high, that area floods, but why couldn't that water
That's
escape?
because that culvert is
that,
really small that comes out under the greenway.
okay.
For what, how much water was in there?
That may be something we have to
Well, it's
look
something
at
to
as
be
well.
routed.
And there's no question for this size
Yeah, I know what
project,
you're
like you
saying.
said, we're talking millions of dollars. You know, the study effort here, I mean, the grant acquired, I think, was about $20,000. There's more evaluation that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Obviously, things like talking with all the agencies that the mayor mentioned earlier, particularly talking with the railroad. I mean, there's a lot more that has to go into that.
And
There's
between
no
the
question.
between the county and various state agencies, they've been saying here are some things you can look into. The federal side of this with FEMA, because a lot of people have asked that, and that was some of the information that we were collecting from people was, you know, what was your damage, so they could assign a number to that. That's a long process. That's a process that requires them to look at our numbers, look at Pitchtown's numbers, look at the 3 counties in the west who also were damaged by the storm. And if miraculously it adds up to the various numbers that they have to do both individually
What
in
was the number? Was it
27,
22 million?
28,
26 was the number.
26, okay.
yeah, it has to add up, and I think individual areas have to have a certain number as well. I don't know if that's going to be a viable option. I know if it is a viable option, we're not going to know for many months. So in the immediate, that doesn't help us.
Well, and FEMA money can be two-stage. One is the immediate, which is you have the damage and you want to get it restored essentially back to pre-condition.
Right.
And that's what they're really looking at now.
Right.
They have some mitigation money, but it is a slow process dealing with FEMA and the federal government.
And that's why, as I was speaking with the state today, they're trying to see what they can do on their end, because they also, you know, understand that the FEMA is a very slow process.
Because didn't Kelly tell us Saturday night that from March when they had the storm, the winter
Yep.
storm. They
Yep.
still haven't received money from that yet, and it's July.
Yeah,
And
they
have received
yeah
money.
when the March storm came through, they submitted all their information to FEMA and they still haven't heard yet because they're still waiting on that.
Too bad there's not an executive somewhere aware of this that could,
Yeah.
give little Hoosick Falls some money to fix this.
Well, I think that's what they're looking into now. So 1 and then 2.
Question on the proposed $8 million price tag.
Mm-hmm.
About how much of that includes replacing the deteriorated infrastructure that we have currently running through the village?
I believe the segment you're talking about, segments like
Hall Street,
23 Main Street across Hall and.
Main Street,
You
Spring
mean the
Street.
actual Woodsbrook corridor?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
The reroute was $5 million.
So that was, that
So then
one
that's-
section is 5 million of that?
Well, no,
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 the-
no,
Okay,
no.
just the
The
reroute.
reroute.
Oh,
The
okay.
reroute's in the
Across
5 million
fields,
range.
okay.
Yeah.
So,
About $1 million upstream improvements as well. And then the remaining portion was the design costs as well as the costs going through the village.
For infrastructure.
For infrastructure
You have to deal with
replacement.
land, whether it's easements, whether it's land acquisition, both on the reroute and the current location of where that is. And there's all those types of costs associated with it
Yeah.
also.
And if, depending on what kind of sizing you want to, it ends up being chosen to go through the village, that would impact those costs.
I know you studied the long-term, I'm sorry, long-term aspects. Have you studied the short-term on some of the damage on Hall Street and what needs to be done there?
I have not, that's not, I don't believe.
I spoke with the state on that today, and that we're trying to, in the next coming days, we're going to talk about seeing, and I spoke with Neil as well, what sort of equipment we can get in there. With, unfortunately, the space we have is limited. There's the right-of-way next to your property that we had to keep clear, which is why the dumpster's there, so we could keep equipment moving through there. But, I mean, that concrete is going to have to be removed. The culvert damage there it's irreparable. There's one portion that the top of the concrete, one wall has sagged and it's actually pulled this way since the storm. Because I think, Mark, you remember that when it wasn't, that one open hole wasn't there, but as the concrete has shifted over.
The next day after the storm, that crack definitely was not there.
And the crack,
And-
yeah.
And it has opened up.
And it's gotten worse, I think. And you said there was a side somewhere that really wasn't on the ground very well.
Well, that's right in that area.
Yeah.
The other side toward Hall Street, really, the wall is gone.
Yeah. Yeah, the retaining wall, that it's basically being held up by the tree roots. And I think one of the plans we're trying to come up with is to top off some of the trees, but we leave the base and the roots for the structure point.
Where the
But-
ties were.
Yeah.
Where the ties were leaning.
Yeah, some of the ties washed down shore now. So in the immediate, that's what we have to take care of. We have to get the concrete out of there. And I'll let up. Neil did a great job of digging out the area right behind, I think, 115 Main Street, and just setting up so if we had heavy rain in that portion, it's fine. It's not going to go right across, but there's still some serious work that has to be done in the immediate to take care of this, so we can sort of go back to breathing easy when a big storm comes.
You're talking about that top there, that you're talking about. Winnie had someone come and actually went under there, because she was at one time going to have the top removed and just open it up. And they
Yeah.
told her they couldn't do it because of all the rebar and stuff that was intertwined, and the
Mhm.
walls would cave in if they uncapped it. I'm just saying, I
Yeah.
forget who you had do that.
I had two estimates from,
Okay.
one from, one was Liam Mahar from Barrington, Vermont,
Mm-hmm.
and Lucitus, is it
Oh, Pat Picardi's.
Okay.
Who's it, Graham?
And Liam Mahar said, I will not touch it, because he said, if I do, this wall is gonna collapse, all the walls are gonna collapse.
And I think in the immediate, we just have to do that now, because right now, I mean, the opening is so small after you come through the Main Street spot. It's just too small. It's going to go right over the concrete, and that's now a hazard. Thank you for your patience.
No
here.
problem. Sam Stewart from Bennington, Vermont. I'm speaking of my numerous sinkholes have taken place around the village and around town. I don't believe that has ever happened before. I think it's safe to state that because of those sinkholes, the debris came down through the culvert of Hall Street, and that naturally the terrain of the water, once you start plugging culverts, that water's gonna find its own way. And naturally, what was the target? Immaculate Conception. All that water filled in course, I'm preaching to the choir, 8 feet of water. So it wasn't silt, it wasn't leaves, it wasn't tree branches, it was actually flat stone. And where did that flat stone come from? Did it come from upper Woods Brook coming down through? I noticed other sinkholes up on Upper Main Street, that collapsed, actually adding to the problem. We never had sinkholes before.
Right, and I think that was a result of water getting places it hadn't been before from the stream. The normal channel was not wide enough to carry all that water, and it spilled over down Hall Street and toward Immaculate Conception. And,
Through the Dodge building, which got.
Right, and that's why we think that rerouting this stream away from that is the best way to alleviate those issues going forward.
Well, we've been dealing with this water problem for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had 10 floods.
Pam go first and then.
And this one, I haven't got in my house. I can't because right now, they've got the water out, but we have about 5 inches of mud that they're trying to get out so that someone can come in. And I just had a new fuse box, whatever you want to call it, put in 6 weeks ago. That is ruined. So they're trying to make a pathway so the electricians can get in there and put a new one in. Outside, I just got a new generator and a tank. That is gone because your flood insurance will not cover it. My homeowners won't insure it. So here I am paying all this money. And what am I going to get? Nothing. Nothing. And I'm living up at the health center right now. I can't get into my home. I can get into it, but it's not livable because the water only got into my laundry room.
Mm-hmm.
But my cellar's ruined. And my outside, I don't have a lawn. I have stone, concrete, mud. And that isn't mine. That came from the brook. And I think they should be responsible for that. I can't take care of it. I'm just going to go with a shovel and clean all that out. I'm 92 years old. And I just about made that to do. I love Hoosick Falls. But right now, I'm disgusted. Because this has been coming on. We've been telling them the walls and all this. It's a private property. I don't own the brook.
Excuse me.
I don't own the walls. But it's encroaching on my property. And if people want to take it so much and garden it, they're welcome to that part. They don't have to ask me, they're welcome to it. But this is 10 floods I've had. We bought the house in 49. We moved in April of 1950. And we got the first flood Labor weekend. And it was a bad one like this. But we didn't get all that much. But now they're going to have to do something, or you'll get the flooding again, and everybody's going to get flooded again in that area.
Yep.
I agree.
But, it's time the state got in here. It's never mind you come and look and do something. These big shots, they come, and all they do, well, there's that. Well, what happens? You don't hear anything else. Is it just for a photograph on the picture taken? That's what I've come to think of it. What's the governor? Did the governor come? I know we're a very small village, but we do pay taxes, and we're a good neighborhood, and we're close people, and we try to help everyone. Now, I've been up at the health center. No one's come up there to say, what can we do for you? No one. What I'm doing is getting private people to do what I have. No one knew. They knew I was up at the health center. Did the Red Cross come? Did they offer me a place to stay? Yes. I have people places to stay. She did. But some of the places they had upstairs. I can't climb the stairs. Maybe once in a while I can climb it. Oh, I've said my piece now. I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. It's okay.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
That's so bad?
I think a lot of us agree with you.
And I'm paying the bills and not like the things that I'm paying.
Pam?
I just have a couple of quick things. When you did the assessment, I spoke to you when you were in the backyard that day and stuff. One concern that I feel has occurred with the Woodsbrook situation, getting increased water flow, is when they built the Easy Street project, that was all farmland. So we didn't have the big influx of water off of there. Then they built the Easy Street project and there's more water flow coming down that hill into the Woodsbrook. And then when that was happening, at some point, they put some kind of a holding thing up there to help with that. But I don't know how much that's actually helped. So you've got that increased flow coming down from there. So I think that's a problem as well. Now, what you were talking about, these big 8-foot things, it's what's downtown, right? The big cement with the big fences, is that what you're talking about?
Well, that's the size.
No, but I mean, that's what you're talking about is something looking like that.
Well, not necessarily. If it comes down this way, it would be underground. It could be underground. You would be going down maybe the side of the golf course, it'd be in the rough. You wouldn't even know it's underground.
But underground has gotten us into trouble this whole time.
Because there's not enough capacity in those existing corridors, and those go under infrastructure, which is a problem.
My second concern is the wall in the back that the mayor was talking about. Someone came at some point, I mean, I've been through 4 mayors. Someone came at some point and evaluated the wall, some environmental or whatever, and they said you should not cut those trees down because by cutting them down, you're weakening the root system and it's gonna cause the wall to cave in. That just was from one of the things that was, evaluations that was done at some point. But my concern is with, as the mayor said, with the railroad ties being gone, it is so much worse now because if you get heavy rains, that dirt's gonna wash down, weaken that bank, and the whole bank is gonna fall right into the brook. It's gonna just cave in, and if, I don't know if you noticed, but at the end of that, there's like 8 feet that it goes up where it's undermined already, up that wall, and that part, it's
There's
just a
no
big hole.
question, when you look at the existing short-term improvements that need to be done, other than cleaning everything out and trying to get back to some normalcy, if you will, that area is really one of the first
I mean, that's
priorities.
just,
It is.
that's gonna cave
There's
in.
a real worry that is gonna be a big
Right.
And I know that there are 2 things. Neil, when he filled in the water, or when he filled in the rocks to sort of remake the walls,
Yeah.
he actually put rocks up against that wall because I think he had the
that,
same
yeah.
concern. And taking,
Yeah, it's against that wall.
because you know it's going to erode anytime if it gets anything.
Where it is, it's that stone wall you're talking about.
No, the railroad tie wall.
The railroad tie wall too, but it's
Yeah.
just above that is
Yeah.
where it's all open with dirt. You know, and you get a heavy rain, it's gonna.
Yep. And the
Walk
idea
it
of taking the trees out is not to take them out at the bottom, but to leave several feet and take them out the top, so it's not like if heavy winds come or if it erodes further, it falls in, blocks the Woodsbrook. We're back to square one again. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the state of emergency is going to stay in that spot, because this is an emergency right now. That situation right there is an emergency.
Okay, and then my other thing is I would just like the village to consider when the driveway is cleared and accessible to get to my property, if we could have I haven't been able to start cleaning out my basement yet because we don't have a dumpster. So if they could consider another dumpster for a few of the neighbors that have yet to clean out, that would be very helpful.
I know the only issue with getting the dumpster back there is if it can actually fit back there, because of at the end of that way there's the 2 sort of roofs between the garage and
Yeah, I
between
mean,
the
even if
property.
they just put the dumpster in the driveway, I mean.
It's not a driveway, it's a right of way.
We can't block it because that's the access for the large equipment, but we'll have to figure
Well,
out
that's
some
right,
way
yes.
to get it. And we thought about going next to 7 Hall Street's property, but that's where the shed basically,
Oh, Nick.
the foundation went out, and I don't think we can fit a vehicle through there either. But I know exactly what you're saying. We may have to go to a smaller dumpster to see if it can fit.
I mean, I just can't get anything out of the basement right now and get it down the driveway. And Neil is gonna come when he's done with his other projects to kind of clear that out for us. We understand that he has those other bigger projects going on.
I'll get in touch with getting the dumpster out. 'Cause I think, are you guys done with the dumpster?
Well, the dumpster that I have is kind of overflowing.
Yeah, we'll get that taken care
And
of
we
tomorrow.
still have more stuff to go, so.
Okay.
It could be
okay.
empty, I mean, I don't have a problem with them putting one in front of my property.
Okay.
You
And
know,
you'd wanted to
other
speak as well,
people.
so you
I
have the
do.
floor. Yeah.
They're welcome to
Okay.
come through my driveway. When they get.
When they get the
big
propane
gas
tank moved out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, well, I would like to start by saying thank you to a couple of people. One is Mayor Allen. I've been here for probably 15 years approximately in Hoosick Falls, and this is the first time I've had a mayor so involved and his presence so present and seemed genuinely concerned and to care about what we were going through and trying to help us out. And so I want to thank you, and seems to, you know, for a new mayor, I think you're doing a tremendous job from what I can see from my angle. So I want to thank you for everything you've done for me and my family and for the village. And I also would like to thank Neil, and I don't really know Neil that well. I don't even know his last name, but Neil works in the village, and he's been working, you know, tirelessly and always with a smile. You know, if you have a question, he stops, takes a minute, you know, and I know the guy's been under a lot of stress and pressure from a lot of people, and, you know, I think that he really deserves some positive feedback instead of, I think he probably gets a lot of negative feedback because he's the one out there on the front lines. But he really is, you know, just doing his job, and from what I can see, he does a wonderful job. You know, he's just doing his job, what he's told to do, like the rest of us that work for a living, right? So thank you, Neil, for everything you've done. And I live on Hall Street, as probably most of you know. My home was very severely damaged. I had, my basement was completely full. I have a full basement. And it was completely full and up into the first floor of my home. And it's the first time it's ever come into the first floor. So right now, the probably 3/4, half of my home is just a shell. It's gone. So needless to say, it's just devastating. It's devastating for me, for my family. My daughter just graduated college. She's living with us. She's home, you know. We're all kind of just, not only were we flooded, but, you know, you have to move instantly. And so it's very overwhelming. So I appreciate the support. My concern at this point in time is that my home has, at this point, it needs a tremendous amount of work. It's gonna take a lot of time and money. And the brook, everybody's kind of put in and said what the status of the brook is at this point in time. It is at its absolute worst. And when he told me, when her and Mike, my neighbor, when they bought their home, Mike used to say the culvert under their property was so deep that he could put a ladder, one of your highest extension ladders, and he had to climb down in to get to the top of the ladder. He could climb all the way down into the brook, and if something big came down through, to take it out. Now that brook, I mean, I'm not gonna estimate measurements. It's about this deep under that cement.
Yep.
That you're talking about. So, you know, I'm like at the point where I don't wanna put all this time and thousands of dollars into my home, and then next week we have another big rainstorm, and it's not gonna take much if that wall caves in, or, you know, we get a lot of water. That's gonna be completely and totally flooded again, and I'm sure the damage to the rest of the village is going to be even more severe than it was this time. So I'm glad to hear that you're looking at some short-term, you know, some quick remediation of this problem, because I can't see how you couldn't otherwise do it, not just for me, but for the whole village. I mean, it's right in the center of the village. I mean, the long-term one, you know, is a long-term plan, and that's necessary. And I'm grateful that that's being looked at and is being started and planned. And, you know, and that it incorporates, you know, fixing the current infrastructure, so. I guess we'll see what happens. Hopefully we'll get some help and some monies and funding to get all of this started, and so we can get our homes and lives back in order here.
Is there a
Thank you.
temporary?
Well, I don't know if you know, but at one time we had floods, and Bonnie had a handicapped son living in that back of his basement.
Yeah.
And, you
Still
know,
likes to
fortunately,
visit.
you know, he wouldn't have been able to get out of there. And, you know, she's redone that room numerous times, but fortunately too, with this one, it started in the daylight. If it ever happened at night, you know, it did go into the night, but, I mean, that would have been really, she's been very fortunate that he wasn't there this time.
Is there something in the interim before we even can get a hold of the grant, looking at money here, relief, and I don't even know if this is realistic, Neil or Bob, or, is there some sort of temporary culvert that can be put in out of Main Street and behind Hall Street, so if that wall comes down, it's not, I mean, on a personal note, grew up with a lot of these people, and my parents still live there, Gene lives there, the whole other side, I mean, is there something we can do in the meantime?
I think the best bet is get the top off that existing culvert.
Yep.
Dig it out.
And that'll be,
Open it up so at least
Yep.
we got free running water in case that wall doesn't.
Yeah.
that way it has somewhere
I
to go.
think in the immediate is maybe get some more rocks built up further down so that sort of ledge will continue. But again, once you get to the spot where the building sort of collapsed in a shed, but that would at least block off a couple of houses, and it would actually probably prevent the same flow across Hall Street that we had.
And I would think from a permitting standpoint, you've been pretty much given clearance to do temporarily what needs
Yes.
to be
Yeah,
done.
DEC has been very supportive on that. Sorry.
So just for, you said that the current grant that you're applying for in a couple of weeks is about 1/8 of the total project.
Yes.
Do you know what exactly parts of that project you would be proposing, or what the kind of, because you said you get the money in December, so what would be the timeline for getting that part done, and then the timeline for getting the overall?
So there's a lot still in place, so we have to figure out what the other agencies are going to put in and when. If it's just the CDBG funding, we would start probably with the upstream attenuation to slow it down as best we can in the short term, while we still look for the bigger funding.
So in timeline, assuming we get it in December, then you have to put it out for bid.
From that perspective,
It's
right.
this time next year.
So you're talking about early to midsummer next year before any work here would be done.
With
Or
that
an
grant.
award,
With that
before
grant.
the grant
Which
money would be available.
we all in this room know is not an acceptable fix for what we have.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we've had flooding New Year's Day. We've had flooding back there. With the ice chunks on the yard, and it happens. And I just wanted to tell you, you need to buy my house. I've talked to some of the neighbors, they're willing to sell too. You need to do that for this project.
That's what
There's a
people
lot.
recommended.
And I did talk to a neighbor, she had 2 raccoons in her kitchen when she got up the other morning. Yesterday or the morning before, she came down, there were 2
Great.
raccoons in her kitchen.
Ugh.
Or when you look at the option we talked about as the third option, reusing the same corridor, that would be part of that option, is what needs to be acquired to be able to put in what needs to be put in, so that further damage doesn't happen to private property.
You know, that's the other option. I mean, how much money do we need to invest in our homes if they're gonna be, you know, the people that are interested in selling or whatever, why would you wanna invest that money?
And that's another layer of the sticky spot
know.
that you guys are stuck in right now.
Yeah, I
is-
mean, if you can't even repair your home because the flood issue isn't fixed, why are we paying these exorbitant taxes that we're paying, you know, what?
Yep.
What are we paying for?
Yeah,
Like,
and that's, I think I will tell you that I've been communicating that need and the situation you guys are facing in the state, so they
Thank
get it.
you.
And I think that the wheels are starting to turn, which is a good thing. Yes.
Am I allowed to go in a deeper direction? You dodged bullet number 2, which was a propane tank. And I know this board doesn't, I guess, is that what your title is, the board of government of the village of Hoosick Falls? I strongly suggest that you draft up an ordinance in the floodplain that if there's any propane tank, it shall be on a pad, it shall be anchored, because floating tanks, they float very easily, and you had to redirect emergency EMS or fire officials in the event of possible evacuation that you have leaking propane.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
So it's something to enact.
Mark, does anything like that exist? Does that anything like that exist? Some sort of ordinance about propane tanks?
My understanding is in the floodplain they are supposed to.
Oh. Well.
He said that in floodplain they are supposed to.
Well, it might have been anchored in.
Yeah, maybe it needs to have some sort of reinforced anchor or something like that.
I don't think that was.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any? Yes.
Yeah, I just, coming out of this meeting today, taking the $8 million proposal aside, what I'm not hearing is immediate action.
Mm-hmm.
So is it a possibility this board tonight can draft a resolution, make a motion to somehow spend $500,000 or whatever gives it a Band-Aid to fix this Hall Street Brook situation? Because you don't know that something's not gonna happen next week. And all we're gonna do is come back next month and say, okay, where are we with all these meetings and all these officials that have been coming around? And while Neil's doing a lot, there's a lot he can't do because the funding's not there to do it. Can you do something tonight that allows a real major Band-Aid fix on this, working toward that?
I would love to say yes.
Okay.
I don't think yes is a solid answer, but the state is aware that we can't do this on what we have. I know that. I've had conversations with thousands of people that are, not quite thousands, but they get it. They get it, and you know, that's one of the many things we're looking into. And frankly, if a month from now you haven't heard anything or nothing's happened with this, bring tomatoes and throw them at me, because that's really the situation.
No, because you're working with bureaucracy. The problem is, day to day, these people need to know, am I gonna be able to get back in my home, or do I need to sell it? They don't know. So this is
Understood.
like, you know.
Understood.
Well, no,
The best I can say is we are working as hard and as fast as we can, and we are exhausting every avenue we can to get extra financial assistance, because we can't do this on what we have. It's just not possible, and that's the unfortunate reality we're facing. But I also think that the state understands that, and they're moving.
I wouldn't be opposed to us as a board and mayor drafting a letter to the governor directly requesting some immediate money to.
It'll go into the pile, Brian.
I would, but
that's the only route we got. The only avenue you can take right now. We don't have a blank check.
But I would support at least making that step and taking a bolder stand to say, hey, you know, if you want it, there are people in rural America that need attention as well, and I think we're a pretty good case study in rural America needing some help right now. So, you know, step it up, Governor, is what I would say.
Well, you know, Brian, this happened before when we had a flood. There was a flood in
2010.
Where was it?
2010.
It was out in, I don't know, if it was Amsterdam or somewhere out there. Their needs were greater than ours at the time. So they did look at us, but because their needs were greater, that's where the funding went. And I think it's like the Thousand Islands and Lake Ontario now. Their needs are so high up there. I don't want us to get missed.
Well, that's what Winnie said was, I pay taxes too. And you know what? We're all supposed to be equal in the United States and in the state of New York as well. So our needs should be, I mean, my heart breaks for you guys, and I grew up in the neighborhood. I know the stress that you go through and how nice your houses have always been kept up, and it's very frustrating that we're not being listened to and that we're not being helped financially where we really need it, because people here really need it and really deserve it. So.
Have we reached out, or they've been in contact with us from Schumer's or Gillibrand's office?
Yes. Gillibrand's office has been in touch a couple different times. Marcion's office, I even got a call. Yeah. They've been, actually I had a conference call with some of the folks in Senator Gillibrand's office talking about getting an idea of what the programs are and how much time they take, which is one of the reasons why we understand that waiting for the federal side of FEMA is just not a viable option. And that was an important step to be able to communicate to the state the full extent of our need and what's not going to work and what we need in immediacy. So I think the next week is going to be very telling as to where it goes the next week or two, and I think in a couple weeks we'll either know that we're getting support or we'll know that we're not. But I guess I'm a little bit optimistic about what I've been seeing and hearing from the state. But of course, you guys, especially you guys who've been there, who've been visited by previous elected officials, and nothing has happened. So, but I think that everything is different now. So.
Yeah, the problem is really tenfold.
Yeah.
Well, even the visit from the officials were different this time, because when they came last time, we were told we couldn't speak to them.
Right.
And when
We're
they
the
came,
ones who called them.
Yeah, we were told we couldn't speak to them when they came the last time.
Yeah, it was very different this
When
time.
the
Right?
officials came this time, they were very open and
Yep.
very.
And they had a lot of good advice too, both on the state and federal level of what are our processes. And Congressman Fassler was really focused on getting the assessments as fast as possible because that's one of the avenues. But we know in the immediate the avenue's going to take too long.
Well, I could tell when you first came down the morning after the flood, and you were standing there, I'm sure you were thinking, what did I get myself into? Because for
the first week of vacation.
Sure.
I think it was at 2 a.m. on Hall Street when I grabbed a crayfish off of the road and was like, wow, crayfish.
This is your second disaster.
This is my 100th day right here. So.
And I want to chime in on Bonnie too. Thank you for being so proactive. And thank you for all the people that you mentioned, the municipalities. I mean, everyone has done.
Like I said, I've had a lot of support from everyone in the village. And so.
I can back up to Rob as far as state officials in the response. I'm optimistic too. So some phone calls I had today with the problem we're dealing with in the town, I got an excellent response. So as long as they do what they said they were going to do, and go out and help us with the project. But I am very optimistic. They do seem to be listening.
Yeah.
And how, is there some way that you can communicate the information when you find out from the county or the state what they're going to do?
The Facebook post and the website has been working, so I'm going to continue doing that. Because I know one of my first ones reached like 20-some thousand people on Facebook within like a day or two. So that's something that Briggs was a response with early on, getting all of this stuff into 1 or 2 spots instead of 9 or 15 spots. So. That's the kind of thing that is one of the things that was set up previously by Briggs, so that when this happened, we had that set to go, and we'll continue doing that because it really worked. Thank you. Anyone else? Well, we're actually an hour into the public hearing, so unless anyone else has some comments, I'd open a motion to close public hearings.
Motion.
Ben?
Second.
Second by Bob. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you guys for coming out.
Thank you.
Any chance you want to leave those maps here? If you need to take them, that's fine. You can always.
They're part of the 8 million. Keep them.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you guys.
All right.
Good luck.
Okay. We kind of had our people to be heard, but is there anyone else who has anything to say in the people to be heard section?
Did they ever dig any of the brooks out? Sheridan, Domus, Cumming Street?
Thank you.
Can they dig out the brooks? Like, there's one right down the street from my house. That's overflowed, that flooded houses down the way from there. It's getting higher and higher. There's that much room, I think.
I think one of the things that's going to come out of this, and that was actually something that was mentioned to by someone today who I met with, was coming up with a maintenance schedule on not just this one, but other ones. So I think that's something we'll have to tie into.
They used to get dug out by the people there, but they've passed away.
Okay.
They used to dig it out periodically. Stevie Lewandowski, Dan
That's a
Kobe.
future discussion, is a maintenance schedule on some of these places.
Now it's up so high and the water's coming down from above because the county redirected it, so the field gets flooded and it goes all into the brook.
All right.
And floods all the cellars and the garages and everything else but mine, thank goodness.
Anyone else? Yes.
I just want to thank Kevin O'Malley and Steve Bradley for social media posting numerous amount of pictures. That has helped out.
Yeah,
Documentation, it makes it retroactive. You can sit there and send pictures in minute minutes to compile all that information. Years ago, we didn't have that. And also, I might want to say with Mayor Allen, he took the time to listen to me for his magnitude holiday season on that Monday of July 4th. I'm not a resident here in Hoosick Falls. I live in Bennington, Vermont, but he took the time to listen to my concerns, so I thank you for that.
Thank you. All right, let's move on then. Treasurer's reports. Denise.
We don't have a treasurer's report tonight. Our efforts have been.
That is okay. There's going to be a lot of those non-reports tonight. That's okay.
I will actually get a treasurer's report to the board by the end of the week.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
And following that theme, Ann and I worked on the minutes back and forth before she left, and then we didn't get a copy of them from before she left, so we don't actually have the June 27 minutes. So we'll have those out in a week too. Apologies on that. Bob Ash, police report. Is he out around there? That's right. We'll skip to Mark. Code enforcement report.
I'm in the same boat as you. I apologize.
No apology needed. No apology needed.
Don't apologize.
It's all right.
It's not like you're out flipping quarters.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get one get out of jail card.
Yeah. All right. Deputy clerk's report.
Yes, I do have a few things. We've all through this, and just before we did have some property changes, 5 to be exact right now. And we've just been processing the property taxes and taking care of correspondence the best we can.
Judy, do you know how many of those were single-family residences or?
Good luck.
I think probably 4 of them anyway.
Okay.
But yeah,
Okay.
I do.
Do I need to do motions for accepting these? I forget.
If we ever get one, yeah.
Yeah.
Motion to accept the deputy clerk's
Motion.
report.
Second.
Brian, second by Ben. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Let's bump back to the police report. Bob Ash.
Hey, last year at this time, we had 120 calls for the month. This year, we're up to 164 calls.
Whoa. Wow. Whoa.
We've had a total of 6 arrests this month. We stepped up our DWI patrols. There's been an increase in DWI arrests. There's been a total of 2 for this month. Harassment has been 2. We've had an aggravated unlicensed operation, 1 bench warrant that we've also had with the other number of calls that we've had. We've already thanked a number of people. I just want to again thank everyone for the help and the assistance during that time.
Yeah.
We were also in the process of, we did a grant with the Rensselaer County Sheriff's Department, and there's some equipment now that's been coming in that we're going to be working out with. I know Denise and I are a little confused over some of the things that were coming in. These are just equipment things, minor equipment things that help out for day-to-day operations. But we are in the process of able to tap into and we're going to open up some bids here tonight, some monies that we are going to spend that is not going to cost us anything. I know that's hard to understand, especially with all this other stuff going on, with all this cost here. But just quick history there. Back on July 16th, 2015, a traffic stop was made and an arrest was made, resulting in the seizure of $117,400 in cash. As a result, a number of arrests were made that have resulted in the convictions of a number of individuals, not just here in New York State and in the village, but also in the state of Vermont. Some of that were tied into some major crime that occurred in Vermont. This year we went through the legal channels to claim the money. And as a result, $117,400 has become property of the village.
Yes. Nice.
So
I make a motion, you make more arrests like that?
Well, as a result of that, we have assigned 2 officers that do drug investigations here. We've had the seizure of some small amounts of money, nothing of this magnitude. But it has tied us into other agencies and information that we develop and we pass on to these other agencies. That information, if it's used in their seizures, will become part of that seizure. Our amounts that we get become less and less, but we are part of that coalition now that we might be able to tie into some other things. So out of that, we had asked for the village to look at a security system here within the station.
What was the original number, Bob, of the whole thing?
117,400. The original seizure was $117,500.
Okay.
But once the
Counterfeit
bank,
$100 bill.
once the bank sat down and did the process, they found one $100 bill
All right.
that was
Just one. Just one.
was fake. So
What
I
about
was nervous
the-
because it started in the beginning of the counting. So
What about the vehicle that you
No.
guys?
the vehicle was something that we couldn't seize because it was like.
No, I mean like the vehicle that you guys are looking to, that you're going through state.
The purchase.
Oh,
purchase,
yeah, I'm
so-
looking into those purchases.
Yeah.
The-
Okay.
What we're looking at is, the village is in need of a new lock system throughout the village. We felt that, they tell us that you have to earmark this money for police equipment, but this is part of the whole building. So what we looked at is having the lock system changed throughout the whole village to include the highway garage. Because we access the highway garage for gas and such. So what we're looking at is, if the board accepts this bid tonight, is all the doors throughout the whole village will be changed to a non-key card system. Each employee will be given a card system, or card, and it will be controlled by a computer that will be purchased out of this as well. And as employees come and go, there won't be necessary to give them keys no longer. They'll just go into the computer, remove the person's name. That will deny them access to the building. So there's a bid that we're gonna be opening here. I think it was opened, and it's, the one that we're looking at is, it's a total of around $37,000. That will take care of every door.
Wait.
Well, there's
the 29 is
there's 3 bids.
the one that
bids.
the 36 doesn't include the DVW. That was the one that
There's
doesn't
3
include
of them in there.
DVW.
One of them does.
Why don't we talk through each one real fast?
Yeah.
Because some of them don't cover certain things.
Yep.
Do you want to start with the Doyle one?
You can start with the Doyle one. I don't think I have that one.
All
I
right.
don't
The
have them in my hand.
third to last page just has scope of work. That's the one that's 36.8. But this does not include setup at the highway.
At the highway.
So they would give us the parts, but they wouldn't actually do the setup. So that would be an added cost
Yeah,
into
that's
this.
cost to us.
So that's the Doyle one.
37,000.
37.
36,848. Yeah.
The Wolf.
Or they have another option with a service contract. That's 28 plus the 300 a month.
Oh yeah. Yep. Thank you.
I believe that one's gonna be a little bit. Well, we'll go on with the
Yeah.
other
Well, I
one.
don't think we'll have to have service.
No. The Wolf security one comes out to 21.6. Now, if I recall, that does not include the highway garage.
That does not include the
So the highway garage is that second one there that would come out to
It's like 4 or 5,000.
something, yeah, about 4,000 or 5,000.
Plus they don't do electric. other
And
than
that's
low
the big
voltage.
one against it, is they won't actually do the electric, so we would have to contract someone else
To install it.
to do the electric, and who knows where that would go.
Nor the network.
Right, and the network. And I think that doesn't come with the computer too. Yeah, it doesn't come with the host PC, the workstation, or for the system software. So I think they'll give you the software, but not the computer in the quote. And the last one, the Center for Security. This one has 28.8, so we'll call it 29 basically on the front. And on the second page, it lists out the additional expenses for the highway garage. So that one came out to
36 and change.
36 or 37, somewhere around there. And I think that based on your guy that went over it and you and I, that's sort of this is the one that
We
we're
did
recommending.
research on the security system one. They've done a number of local PDs as well.
On the one, the
Is that the Center for Security one
Yeah.
at Clifton Park? Okay.
They're known in the legal field. So.
If you read the first paragraph here, it really explains the details of what they would install. I mean, we have this under new business. Was it okay to move this portion up to the right now? Okay. So you're recommending the Center
I'm
for
recommending
Security.
that, as well as there'll be, and we have cameras already in the facility here.
Mm-hmm.
They're gonna come back and take a look at these cameras, as well as outside.
Okay.
We won't have to go out for a bid on that.
Okay.
Because it's existing equipment within here, but it needs to be
Upgraded.
upgraded.
Badly.
Tied into this so that everything will be recorded.
Okay.
That will include, when we're conducting the interrogations and stuff like that, when the state is pushing us to start videoing that,
Mhm.
that will, we'll tie that in, and the possibility of us in the future of looking at, cameras within the patrol cars to video traffic stops.
Dash cams, right,
Dash
Bob?
cams.
So going back to the original 117.4, but going back to the 117,400, the vehicle purchase was what?
Roughly 37,000.
37.
That comes under a state bid. You don't have to bid that out.
Right.
It's purchased.
So that brings the money down to approximately 80,000. And if we go ahead with whichever this one is, which was about 36 or 37, we'll call it 36 for now. That brings the remaining down to 44,000
Well,
ish.
And you told me, Bob, the inside cameras are approximately what, the two?
That's not in here. It'll come at a.
No, no. I'm saying when we talked, it
Right.
was like about 2,000
About
for the
another 2,000.
for the dash cams.
For the dash.
Right.
Do you have other plans with the 44? I know. I think
Well,
the gun locker.
We have to upgrade our handguns,
Mhm.
and we've worked out a deal with your approval that we trade in the existing guns we got, and they'll provide us with 7 new handguns, and that cost is just under $1,000 for that.
Okay.
That voucher is in there, right, Bob?
Yes, that voucher.
That's in that pile of bills. Is that hand chair or?
No, that's not, AmChair is entirely different.
The other
It's-
Applied Concepts?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
The Applied
There's
Concepts
plenty of-
voucher. And then the other,
Yeah, he's
what was
gonna
the other
have
voucher that you didn't see tonight?
That's
We're not gonna submit this. We've got.
You good with it?
Check on that first.
Right now, we're looking at the car, the system throughout the building, the alarm system, and the hand.
I think we're gonna vote.
Do you guys have any questions on the bids, or does it sound like you guys are ready to make a decision?
I make a motion that we award the bid for the keyless security to keyless access to the Center for Security.
Okay.
Second.
Second by Brian. Any further discussion on this? Okay. All
She's
in,
gonna go to the police version of Amazon.
yeah, right. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Motion carries.
Thank you. Now,
Anything else in the report? You're still in your report.
what we're also looking to do, just for, I know the conversation may come up, and I wanna just quickly review it. We have to fix some, or redo some work inside the police station to accommodate the system that's coming in for the security system. So we've talked to Jerry, along with the courts, on the work program. So they're gonna come in at no cost to do the labor work. So there'll be some additional, like, material costs for renovations, and I don't anticipate that to be any more than $1,000, again, to come out of the seizure money. And the other thing is the state corrections has come in, and they are now requiring us to create holding cells, which we had at one time. They are now coming in and telling us that we have to
Put them in.
re-put them in. And that's gonna become a cost. I know Jerry and I have talked about it. They can do that work. We thought some of the stuff that was taken out was still down at the highway department. I think the toilets were still here. It's nothing major, but it is major, and I only anticipate that cost to be no more than $2,000 to accommodate the state. They're gonna come in and give us a layout of what it is. Again, I'll be coming back to you when they come out of the seizure.
So that's less than what you and I talked about, because we talked, it was approximately 10,000.
Oh, God, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I'm hoping and praying. What they're telling us that I can create, we can, once we get the material, we can create it ourselves.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that it just stays to that 2,000 mark. We have to do some lighting down there, has to be changed, et cetera. So I'll come back to you later on, because I know
Sure.
this question might come up as to what are we doing with the rest of our money. And the last part of it is to, nope, that's it. That should leave us about $40,000 left of the seizure money, and then we'll just leave that in our seizure account. and as we go by, maybe throughout the course of the year, we'll be able to come back to you if we need something. If not, just leave it there for next year. I put there something. So we'll be coming back possibly for future costs. But this is big because a lot of this cost that we're looking at right now, we'd be wondering when we're going to be coming up with the money. And right now, we're lucky. Yes, the guys are out searching.
Especially the six-figure thing. Looking for a motion to accept the police report?
Yeah.
Motion. Ben? Second, Bob Downey. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. I, for some reason, forgot the water treatment plant report, or wastewater treatment plant. We got yours?
You got mine.
Did everybody get this one?
No.
No.
It's right here.
Just you.
Just me. You guys go take a look. We got a couple down here. Anything you want to add to it?
Not really.
Sounds good. All right. Do you guys want to skim over that, or otherwise you're gonna we'll take a motion.
Motion.
Motion to accept.
Yeah.
From
Second.
Brian. Second from Kevin. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstained? Great, carries. And is Josh here? Okay. Is there a community development report? Breaks?
Yes.
Yes.
Some of the things I'm going to push to next month just based on other priorities. A few quick things. The social media is 100% streamlined now, so I can get you hooked up with Twitter as well. Instagram I don't think would be best for this, but I'll send that all your way.
Sounds good.
I will be writing, with the help of Brian, social media guidelines, just on events, just keep things consistent, keep the message consistent. Skipping ahead. Couple of events coming up. I do want to remind you guys about the border busting brouhaha next Thursday at Brown's. And that is the event with the Bennington Chamber. And I met with Matt last week, and we're going to do that quarterly, which is great. So next month I do want to see if possibly joining that chamber. I want to work a deal out with them just because I think it's fair that if we're doing this quarterly.
That's the 20th, right, Grace?
Yes, the 20th, 5:30 to 7:30. And then I'm gonna start sending out one positive press release a week. That's my goal. So if someone knows something that they want to see pushed, I just want to inundate the press with that stuff.
Can you let them know?
Yes. And then I will be doing a contest for Hoosick Rising, rebranding of that for a logo and for a new name. And then the last thing, I know Jean's here, and I want to mention we are doing in conjunction with National Grid, SCORE, LDC, Hoosick Rising, SBA, KeyBank, Tresco, Tri-State Federal Credit Union, a Hoosick Falls Open for Business seminar. So people will have an opportunity to hear from all of those people what resources are out there, and then they can do one-on-one afterwards. So that's set for September 14th, a ways out, but I do want to mention it. September 14th, 4 to 6 at the Armory. And the last thing I want to show you guys is the updated logo. I want your opinion on which one you like better. I talked to Brian about just adding lines, because we thought maybe this might look like, I won't tell you which one I like better, but I'll pass them around.
Yeah. Pass it down.
Okay. It's a very subtle difference, but
You can take and pass it down.
But
to
it
the-
is.
It is.
You didn't notice it.
Yep. And I can make them thicker or whatever, but I do want to move forward, and I'll talk to, I don't know who I'll talk to about this, but getting letterhead, envelopes, business cards, starting to really push it out there.
What is that upper line on the left-hand side?
Browns.
Okay.
There'll be a
Just
brand
kinda
guide
round.
we're putting together as well
Yep.
that'll explain what the logo means, why the colors are there, what it represents, what the buildings are. They're kind of right now it's the wood block, it's the Armory, it's Browns, it's our right now our open for business, kind of our
Yeah.
anchors of the community in many ways, and big buildings.
I'm ready to switch the letterhead to this as soon as we feel like we have
Great.
the document.
So whatever you guys like better, lines, no lines.
What do you guys think, lines or no lines?
You won't hurt my feelings.
Well, because it does
The
actually.
lines define it.
Yeah, you know it's not one building.
Can you see?
It's hard to tell from here.
Yeah, that's a thin line.
I'm fine with either.
Exactly.
I actually, at first I was lines, then it was no lines, so I'm just.
Briggs
flip
is
the
the
coin.
pro.
They have lines to
What are you thinking, pro?
What do you prefer?
I like no lines better. However,
The no lines it is.
yeah. However, I mean it does show that it's different
It distinguishes
buildings.
like separate.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
so subtle, but it really is up to you guys.
But if you look at it, everything's together.
Yeah.
Together. Do it without lines.
Mhm.
Let's put that in the,
That's going in the
let's put that in the
branding
brand
guide.
There you go, right
I
across
kind of
the
lean towards no lines as well.
No lines?
Okay. It's good. It's another. That's
What do you
Think
think?
about
You
it,
think
though.
no lines or lines?
initially no lines. But, Karen, yeah, I thought no lines initially. Then I saw lines, but you know, I like what you just said, Ben, and that.
Yeah,
This
I
is
think-
supposed to tell a story. Yeah.
I said that's going in the branding guide.
Yeah, it's all
That
together.
line.
We have it recorded, so we'll get it.
And this
Yeah.
can be used for the town. It can be used for any hamlets as well. Just changing out Hoosick Falls for North Hoosick or for Town of Hoosick or
Okay.
so it's universal.
Yes. Yep.
Great.
So
Anything else?
no, so we're no lines.
I think we're no lines, right?
Great.
No lines. Yeah.
So
no
I'll
lines.
shoot you an email just to figure out who we order and all that.
Okay.
stuff.
Thank you.
That's it.
Motion to accept the community development report.
Second.
Bobby and Ben. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do we have a community service report? No. Great. I mean, not great. They're doing great stuff, but we're moving through this meeting. All right. Old business, court audit. Any information on that?
No, I didn't set it up. I don't believe it has to be done immediately.
I don't think that's been immediately.
No, because I just did it in November.
Okay, it's just old business too.
Yeah,
already on
yeah,
there,
yeah.
so.
No, I got
Nothing to
I
report.
got a schedule with Holly, but I'll definitely take
Okay.
care of it.
Oh,
That's
well,
fine.
they should update the mayor name. Monahan?
All right. Oh yeah, I saw that. The Mayor Monahan listed there.
No, it's like no
They
worse
should
than-
audit their,
It's bad as Mayor Robert Ryan.
Mayor Robert
Yeah,
Ryan got a
that's
letter
right.
said that
Bob
earlier
needs
this
that.
week. All right. I'm looking for a motion to authorize Mayor Allen to sign the grant agreement, engineering planning grant between the Village of Hoosick Falls and New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation, dated June 26, 2017.
That's a roll call vote, right?
Motion from Karen.
Second.
Yeah, second from Brian. Thank you. The backstory is we already did this. We're just doing it and putting it out there so we know. This is probably a roll call vote. We'll just have a roll call vote just in case. So if you don't mind, roll call vote.
Sure.
I'm sorry. Is there any further discussion?
No.
Okay. Sorry. Roll call vote.
Okay. Bob.
Yes.
Karen. Brian.
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
Ben. Kev.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you guys. New business. We have a whole bunch of shared service agreements. But before we do that, the CSEA contract for the Highway Department employees, we were in touch. We basically came up with the idea of a 1-year agreement, which would keep everything the way it is, except for the pay increase, the same pay increase that the police received for continuity's sake, with the idea of choosing this time to get through everything else we're going on right now. And if we need to relook at that, we can relook at it. So right now we have a signed agreement from their union that they voted on. So I'm looking for a motion for the mayor to sign and execute a 1-year memorandum of agreement to current CSEA contract retroactive to June 1st, 2017.
Motion.
Motion from Ben.
Second.
Second from Bobby Ryan. Any discussion on this? Okay.
All good.
Do we need a roll call on this? I don't think we do. I don't think we need a roll call.
On what?
On the CSE agreement with the Highway Department union employees. Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. One of the things we've been discussing is the possibility of hiring a secretary for the building inspector to handle a lot of the work on the sort of computer side of things and the paperwork side of things, so that he can be out continuing to do his job. So one of the things we've talked about is bringing on a secretary. The idea we're throwing out right now is at $12 an hour, 15 hours a week. However that's divided, it's divided, with a tentative plan for 2 months. But we can decide what we want to decide, with the idea of sort of running it now and using that as a trial run for maybe next spring or next summer, where we would have it for a long period of time, depending on sort of the season of need when this comes. And it sounds like, Mark, that everything gets pretty crazy and heavy for you in springtime. So,
Pretty crazy and heavy right now.
well, yeah. Fair point.
Everyone
Fair
gets that.
point. So, any general thoughts on this?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
I would agree.
And I will also say that Hoosick Falls Central School has donated a small table that would just barely fit in the corner of that room for a secretary, as well as some other storage binder storage equipment in the office. So I want to thank them. So I guess at this point I'm looking for we need a motion to advertise this, correct?
Yeah.
So we need a motion to advertise this position.
Motion to advertise position for Secretary Building Inspector.
All right, Brian.
Second.
Second, Karen. Any further discussion?
I'll say thank you to Mark Mark, I don't know how you do all you do, but thank you. And any help we can get you need.
Yeah. All right.
I would like to say too that I think our mowing program is going better this year. We've hired a second firm to help out with that, so I think we're seeing more results a lot quicker than we were.
And we just had someone else mention that their property needed to be mowed, and they were already on the list, right? A couple days ago.
Yes.
Yeah, I expect them today.
Yeah.
I expect them today, and I should be able. I didn't do it today, but I should be either.
Were you busy
sending
today?
out no, actually, I'll be contacting mowing companies tomorrow.
Great. Thank you, Mark.
The problem's always been that Mark, once he gets a complaint, he has to send them a letter, gives them 10 days, and then gives those complaints to the mowers, and then we get them done. But when anybody sees a lawn that's over, 8 inches? 11 inches. They can file a complaint with the village.
By then you could hay it.
If it's overgrown, I mean, I don't want
Get some goats.
It's overgrown.
Right.
Well, we did have to hay one property on Griffin Avenue, so.
All right. Any other discussion on this?
Well, it's like hay.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Motion carries. Okay. Resolution expressing support for the engineering planning grant (EPG) funding application to evaluate effluent disinfection alternatives for the village wastewater treatment plants. That is this one here. I have to read all this, don't I? All right, here we go. Whereas the Hoosick Falls Board, Village of Hoosick Falls, Rensselaer County supports the submission of a consolidated funding application, or CFA, on behalf of the village for the Water Infrastructure Engineering Planning Grant, or EPG, program to conduct a study on the effluent disinfection at the village's wastewater treatment plant, WWTP. And whereas the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, DEC, in conjunction with the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation, EFC, provides a competitive statewide reimbursement grant program to assist in the initial planning of eligible clean water state revolving funds, or CWSRF, water quality projects. And whereas the Village of Hoosick Falls meets EPG eligibility criteria, has been notified of upcoming modifications to the village's State Pollution Discharge Elimination System, or SPEDIES, permit that will require the disinfection of effluent from the wastewater treatment plant and is below municipal medium household income requirements. And whereas if funding is received, it will allow the Village of Hoosick Falls to prepare an engineering report to evaluate effluent disinfection alternatives, enabling them to seek financial assistance for construction through the CWSRF program to advance needed water quality improvements. Now therefore be it resolved, the village board on behalf of the village identifies Mayor Robert Allen as the authorized representative for the project, able to execute necessary documents relative to and as required for the CFA, and be it further resolved that the Hoosick Falls Village Board on behalf of the village recognizes and fully supports the submission of the CFA for an EPG for the effluent disinfection study.
Well done.
Whew.
So moved.
So moved. Second. Thank you. Further discussion? I think it's 2022 is when the SPEDIES thing takes in effect, and it's just looking at other possibilities, but UV is probably the most likely. Okay. Good. Any other discussion? Questions? Yeah, I was going to do roll call on this one, yeah. All right. Roll call vote.
Okay, Karen? Brian?
Yep.
Yes,
Kev?
Judy.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Kev?
All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Motion. I'm looking for a motion to advertise for bids on a contract for an attorney to assist the village in prosecuting certain code enforcement and zoning law violations with work to commence on or about August 15th, 2017.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Ben.
Okay.
Second, Bobby. Now, it's possible that this could actually come hand in hand with the new attorney that we're still seeking for. But in case it doesn't, we're sort of covered here. Any discussions or questions, thoughts, comments?
Is this going to help alleviate some of the problems that Mr.
What's happened is when
John Street?
we get through the fines, and then the fines are, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, the fines are imposed by the court, and then if the person doesn't pay the fines, what happens next? This is the next step.
Well, part of it is we're just getting bogged down in things really, the courts, the court ends up doing what I've already been doing, which is giving people 30 or 60 days to do what they need to do. They're not doing it. I'm sending them into court, and the court's turning around and doing the same thing. So it's just getting bogged down. So I'm not an attorney, I'm just here kind of representing the village through this process, and so we're still kind of figuring it out. But yeah, sometimes we just need the attorney to help us kind of get it over the edge.
Right, and historically, I would appear if there was another attorney on the other side. This dates all the way back to the 70s. But for many years, it's been obvious that the only way that you can really set the tone and keep the pace going is if you have somebody that's actually there prosecuting on behalf of the village. And Mark does a good job. I mean, he says he's not a lawyer, but he's pretty sharp. It's just that it also makes it easier when you are dealing with attorneys to be able to have this. And if you have somebody here on a regular basis, it'll be the same thing that they have in other communities and even in larger cities. But you have enough volume here, so I always thought that this would be the best thing. And it was never, after it became really obvious that there was going to be a tremendous amount of volume years ago, I realized I couldn't do it except for the extreme cases, and I would appear for the village and do what I could do. And I think this will make it easier for you to have somebody that's, as long as they follow the criterion. I think some of the dates in the RFP I did for you, you might want to, before you put it in, you might want to just update those dates.
All right.
What is the process if somebody owes?
I'm sorry?
What is the process if somebody owes, say, $30,000 in fines? What's the next step?
Well, I think that the next step should be that once they have the sufficient information, they should be able to get a transcript of judgment from the court. That should be able to be recorded in the Rensselaer County Clerk's office, and my suggestion would be that it would be processed like any other money judgment enforcement. So therefore, they'd be able to lien on property or bank accounts or whatever. Have to go through the sheriff's office to do it, but that's number one. The other thing is that some of the things I've written over the years do provide not only fines but also jail time, and that's something that
Don't send them to jail if they don't pay the
payers,
fine?
I mean,
I've never seen
We're not built yet.
So that's and that's something that might become a regular feature. Plus, there are things that are in the local laws that we have now that might be able to be updated to add increasing penalties based on repeated violations or multiple properties by the same owner that are a problem. In other words, but the thing is that we have lots of laws on the books. The idea is to make sure you enforce them.
Thanks.
Any other discussion on this? Do we have we have the motion already, right? And seconded?
Yes.
Okay, so, all right, in that case, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next three are all shared service agreement. The first one authorizing, I'm looking for a motion to authorize the highway superintendent, not the mayor, Neil Stoll, to renew a shared service agreement with New York State Department of Transportation. We do have to have a discussion as to whether we sign it for a 2-year or a 4-year. That's just part of the situation. So first, I would take I'm looking for a motion to authorize Neil to renew the shared service agreement with DOT.
Motion.
Karen?
Second.
Second, Bobby. Discussion about whether it's 2 years or 4 years. I don't see a difference. Neil, do you see a difference? I would say 4 years.
Is it better to lock in for 4 because it's just longer if it's?
It didn't make any sense to me.
You don't have to
about
go
as
to
much
2
as you
years.
did when it was on TV.
Yeah, one less thing in a meeting in 2 years.
Yeah.
I recommend we go with the 4-year.
All right, 4-year. Okay. Okay. In that case, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries, and we will do the 4-year. Motion to sign a 3-year shared service agreement between the Town of Hoosick Highway Department and the Village of Hoosick Falls. I'm looking for a motion for this, sorry, and the Village of Hoosick Falls Highway Department, so I'm looking for a motion.
Motion.
Ben?
Second.
Second by Brian. I reviewed this, you reviewed this, they reviewed this, we had some corrections and little tweaks, and it's good, and I think the town actually passed this last night, so any discussion and thoughts on this?
The only question I have is, if the other one's 2 or 4, why is this one 3?
That one's through DOT.
Yeah,
I don't know why. I don't know why the DOT one's weird. There was another one that was a 1 year. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No
Good
problem.
question. Yep. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Motion carries. I'm also looking for a motion to sign a 3-year shared service agreement between the Town of Hoosick and the Village of Hoosick for police services.
Motion.
Bobby?
Second.
Second by Ben. Again, these are pretty much the exact same ones. We reviewed them again.
Yep.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We already did the keyless access system. So the last thing here, motion to adjust the April utility bill for property located at 53 Center Street for water in the amount of negative $48.75 and sewer in the amount of negative $50.20. A leak was recorded and the receipt for repair was submitted. So I'm looking for motion.
Motion.
Second.
Bobby and Ben, you guys want to fire tonight? Any discussion or questions on this? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. At this point, I'm looking for a motion to go into executive session for a legal update to board on the status of possible litigation regarding environmental issues.
Motion. Hey.
Brian snuck in. Second.
Gotta get up early.
Looking for a
Maybe.
second. Looking
We're
for a
late.
second. Ben, second. Just as a discussion point, there will be no further business discussed after this, or handled after this. We'll just discuss them at the ending. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, don't forget your motion to come out of executive session.
Yes, I forgot to do that. Thank you. Before we do that, can I get a motion to? Oh no, I'm talking about executive session.
You're already in executive
I already
session.
closed the other one. I thought it was the public hearing. We did close that. Yes.
we're
We're
good.
right down here. Thank you. All right. Yeah, we'll do that at the end. Yeah.
Mayor?
Yes.
Can we do the civic here?
Oh, jeez, I missed the civic here.
Sorry.
Do we have to
Shoot,
close
shoot, shoot.
executive and reopen it?
Yes, let's close it and reopen it.
Motion to close executive
Motion to close.
Second.
Brian. Second by Karen. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the executive session lasted 1 minute.
Can we move on to the
My
motion?
total apologies. Okay.
One more thing, civic here, where'd they go?
Where are they on here? Did I just miss them completely?
No, they were not.
I forgot. That was my bad.
It's Ann's fault. She's not here.
And I motion
All right.
to close.
Just as a quick summary on this. Kevin, we're back in a meeting session here. Come on over here. Just a quick summary on this. Civic here is pursuing a New York Main Street downtown stabilization grant, and their goal with this, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to work on asbestos removal, lead abatement, and replacing the roof on the structure. This is one of sort of many steps as they try to get this building back through. I'm going to read the resolution because I have to. Resolution by the Village of Hoosick Falls Board of Trustees approving and endorsing the Civic and Cultural Restoration Corporation, or CivicCure, in its application to New York State Homes and Community Renewal for funding under the New York Main Street Downtown Stabilization Program. Whereas the Civic and Cultural Restoration Corporation is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization and desires to apply for $150,000 in financial assistance through the 2017 Consolidated Funding Act application, or CFA, under the New York Main Street Downtown Stabilization Program. And whereas the application proposes funding to assist CivicCure in undertaking renovations to the wood block building, a Village of Hoosick Falls downtown anchor building owned by CivicCure at 1 to 5 Main Street, occupying the block between John Street and Classic Street. And whereas the proposed funding will contribute to ongoing community revitalization efforts. And whereas the grant application requires that the applicant obtain the approval and endorsement of the governing body of the municipality in which the project will be located. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Hoosick Falls approves and endorses the 2017 submission of a consolidated funding application by CivicCure for funding from the New York Main Street Downtown Stabilization Program. So I'm looking for, we have to do a roll call vote for this. Also, I guess, do I have to have a motion or not just read it and we vote?
Yes.
Yeah.
Need the motion.
Motion.
Kevin, thank you. Second?
Oh.
Alright, Karen got it.
That was good.
Alright, any discussion on this?
Nope.
Good, okay, in that case, roll call vote please.
Okay, Bob?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Brian? Bob?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Ben?
Yes.
Yes. Alright, motion carries, thank
May,
you.
thanks, I'm sorry.
Say, no, that's alright, I'm looking for the second executive session motion tonight, for the same. Brian, and, Bobby, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Executive session again.
Good job.